right, well, it is 7 or perhaps a moment after. Can we go ahead and call the roll?
Maria Ryan,
Here?
Bart Bartles,
Here.
Morgan Johnston,
Here.
Todd Rusk, Andrew Stump,
Here.
Pam Wojtek, Stephen Wald.
Here.
All right, we have quorum. Do we have any changes to the agenda this evening? All right, doesn't look like it. For the minutes, why don't we get a motion to approve, and then during discussion we can make any amendments that are needed.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there a discussion? I just wanted to make one small change to the, right under the call to order, just to note that Stephen Wald chaired the meeting last time. Is that acceptable to the mover and seconder? It's a friendly
Yes.
minute?
Yes.
All right, great. Are there any other changes or discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes with that correction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. Do we have any members of the public who wish to address us this evening? No? All right. Very good. Then we'll move on to our communications item and the monthly staff report. Scott.
Good evening. First up, some updates on our climate action plan. The city participated in a multi-city municipal electric aggregation bid. The terms are going to be for a 3-year term, and I've got the price breakdown for the price that we secured. This does include the purchase of 100% renewable energy credits equal to all the electricity that we will consume within the aggregation program. That's an element of our climate action plan, and the single largest reduction in greenhouse gases is attributable to our purchase of renewable energy credits. The price we secured is 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Previously, that's for the supply portion of your electric bill. Previously, we were paying 4.746 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's higher, but we're confident that this is a competitive price for the next 3 years and that we will, in fact, save money compared to other options.
Do you know off the top of your head what the current price is from Ameren?
It's a split price. It's 6.7 cents for the first 800 kilowatt hours, and then it goes down for the anything above that for a month's worth of consumption. I can't recall what that number is, but I think it's about 4.5 cents for your consumption above 800 kilowatt hours within a month. But I think for most households, they're not going to have that much consumption that's above 800 kilowatt hours. It might be a little. So I think our price is going to be really competitive, and that Ameren rate is going to reset, I think, in June. So they'll have a new rate going into that next season, and of course they reset their rates on a regular basis, whereas ours will be fixed for 3 years. And as always, individuals have the opportunity to opt out and go back to Ameren default service or choose another alternative retail electric supplier. So choice it still remains.
What's our opt-in or opt-out rate right now?
The opt-out is very low. I don't recall the precise number. There's actually, it seems that there's a larger number of people. If you take a look at who's enrolled at any particular instance in time, there's a lot more people that were missing from move in, move out, unoccupied,
Okay.
than are actually making an effort to opt out. I think our opt-out rate, it might be in our aggregation report, our quarterly aggregation report, our total participation. I can't recall if that's in every year, but or maybe every quarter, or whether we just sum it at the end of the year. I don't think that I don't think that our provider provides that quarterly. Additionally, with our aggregation, we have engaged with our consultant to seek to do a couple things. One is to inquire if we can sign an additional agreement with our supplier, the winning bidder, which is Homefield Energy again. Sign an additional agreement whereby they would agree to only procure Green Power Partnership qualified renewable energy credits for our program. So we're negotiating that. The Green Power Partnership is an EPA program. It's a recognition program for the purchase of renewable energy and renewable energy credits. And they have some stipulations on the credits. They have to be either, if I recall off the top of my head, either generated within the year that they are procured for, the calendar year, or 3 or 6 months in the previous year. So that is to say, they have to be recently generated. They can't be renewable energy credits that have been sitting on a shelf for 2 years waiting for someone to buy them. So we're exploring that. That would give us the ability to join the Green Power Partnership and get that national EPA recognition as well. We'll also be exploring whether the supplier can enroll city facilities at the same rate as our aggregation price, which is what the supplier has done in previous agreements. So we're going to negotiate that as well. Let's see. Update on Solar Urbana-Champaign. That's actually out of date already. We are now up to 98 kilowatts of installed capacity. Our first goal for the program was to reach 100 kilowatts of installed capacity, at which level all previous, current, and future participants would receive an additional 1% discount on their installation. So folks who have already signed a contract and paid, they're going to get a check in the mail. Folks that have not yet signed a contract will just see a lower price and an additional discount reflected on their bid proposal. If we reach 150 kilowatts, there's another 1% discount, and 250 kilowatts, another 1% discount. So the more people participate, the cheaper the price is, just like bulk purchasing. So we have, I think, maybe another 40 kilowatts that is verbally agreed to. So they're not in the bank, so to speak, but you know, a good possibility that we're going to sign another. You know, we may reach that 150 kilowatt mark.
Scott, do you
Question?
mind? I thought I'd just add quickly. I think I told you last week, but anyway, I didn't mention it to the group. I was in a conference on the other side of the state for the Illinois Green Economy Network, and they were just all about the way you're handling rolling out the Grow Solar in this area, and it's really being marketed as the way to do it statewide. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks, and a lot of credit to the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, iGen, Illinois Green Economy Network, the Grow Solar Partnership folks, Environmental Law and Policy Center, our vendor, Straight Up Solar, and their partner, New Prairie Construction. They've been great to work with. Yeah, it's my understanding that there's a lot of interest in Bloomington Normal to run a very similar program.
Scott, I wonder if, you know, so this is a time-limited thing, and so I wonder if, you know, maybe partners are already kind of talking about, well, you know, what if there's more interest? You know, do we extend the partnership for a year? And I know that the, you know, MREA is kind of hinging on a DOE grant, but I just wonder about I guess I'm just kind of curious about, like, say from Grow Solar perspective, if the business case is strong enough, you know, to have another go. So anyways, I just wonder about that conversation generally.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to speculate about. One of the challenges with running the program longer or running another round would be the enormous price benefit that we're getting from the state's procurement of SRECs, solar renewable energy credits. There's a limited supply of those. And if, for instance, our plan is to finish signing contracts May 31st and spend the rest of the year actually doing the installs and getting all the installs done by the end of the calendar year. If we imagined that there was none of the state's SRECs available at the end of the year, or say even by May 31st, we could rerun the program again, but we'd be looking at substantially higher costs per install. Maybe we would still, be successful. It would still be lower, because of the other discounts we're taking advantage of. But would people have sticker shock after seeing these bargain basement prices?
I didn't remember that we had a limited supply of state SRECs.
Well, the state, there's a state law that required, I think it's the Illinois Power Authority or the Illinois Commerce Commission, can't remember, to satisfy a portion of the renewable portfolio standard with a certain amount of solar renewable energy credits from small systems, so under 25 kW. And so the state bid those out, and so there's a limited supply.
Okay.
I mean,
the state
people
bid those out in this program.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the state in the future could decide to pass a law and buy more SRECs, but that would require new legislation.
Okay.
Now, your systems are always generating SRECs,
Sure.
and if you can find a buyer, you can sell them, which people have done, and will do again in the future. The issue is
Scale, right.
well, it's that you won't get as good a price.
Yeah, I think you're saying limited supply, but you mean there's a limited
Demand, I guess, is
Demand.
actually the better way to say
I
it. Yes.
see. Okay.
Well, there's a limited state demand, right, at that higher price.
Okay. So as part of this deal, the state was they were the ones uptaking on purchasing the SRECs.
Yeah, that
I see.
SREC purchase can in some scenarios amount to as much as a quarter of the install cost. So it's pretty significant.
Okay.
Now, fortunately, the 30% federal tax credit was extended, so that'll persist past our project and past the calendar year. But we would probably be losing at least some of that SREC value. There is an associated state purchase of SRECs, same piece of legislation that authorized it, but that's actually for larger capacity systems.
Okay.
So what they were doing is carving out. Well, we don't want 3 giant solar fields. Nothing against solar fields, to soak up all of the SRECs we want to buy. We want to get a variety
Okay.
of types of installations.
Okay. So we just it's about market outlets for those SRECs.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Now, if for some reason soft costs or hard costs, went down dramatically more in the next year, and kind of compensated for some of that loss, okay, then we should run it again. It's a little bit more careful of a discussion if we're going to rerun it at a higher price. Some people are still going to they weren't ready before, but they will be ready 9 months or 13 months from now, and they'll be okay that they missed a better buying opportunity, but they're still in a good buying opportunity.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah. So selling 100 kilowatts is different than selling a megawatt of.
in terms of SRECs,
Yeah.
the cutoff is 25 kilowatts. So there's a better price if you're under 25, and a lower price you're going to get if you're
Okay.
above 25.
Okay. Okay.
Now, for individuals who are interested in putting in something that's larger, it's my understanding that if you have multiple meters, you can just split 25 kilowatts here, 25 kilowatts there, and still take advantage of those higher priced SRECs.
Okay. Thanks.
So,
Yeah.
the advantage and motivation of running another round of it, though, is that you already know how to do it. You've created all the branding and processes, and it's so easy to just hit reset. So we'll see. Something that we'll evaluate
Yeah. Yeah.
at least in May or at the end of the year.
Mhm.
In the meantime, this round is still viable and active. There's still
Oh, yeah.
power hours.
Yes.
This
We-
information about this being a particularly good time, there's still time for that to get out and have people sign up
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the solicitation.
The partners who have run these types of programs before say you might as well run power hours right up to the, into the last month, because people sign up at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So we'll keep going. There's a really interesting opportunity. We had to reschedule, so it's going to be this month now. We're going to be holding a power hour at the Farm Bureau, and we're going to have USDA folks there who are going to talk about the additional incentives that the USDA has for USDA rural zone ag-related businesses. So those are on top of all the benefits that our residents are already getting. So it's a really great opportunity. That will be a longer power hour because there will be the normal thing we're doing, and then also the USDA talk.
You have so you said, I think 91 kW is the number right now of capacity contracted. How many homes is that right now?
I think that's 12 contracts.
Okay.
And the last I glanced, they were roughly equal, Urbana, Champaign.
Okay.
Update on the Georgetown University Energy Prize. They've been working to get a dashboard that shows the rankings of the competition in real time, insofar as there are quarterly data updates to the program. And that's up now. They've been having some technical difficulties, but I think it is working. And Urbana is currently ranked 21 out of 50 in terms of energy efficiency. They blend a lot of different data to create that score, so it's more of an index score than a simple, kilowatts or therms accounting. But we are in the competition. The community members who are working together to advance energy efficiency in the residential sector have been meeting again and looking at ways to improve our public engagement in terms of engaging folks to undertake energy efficiency behaviors and upgrades in their home. And some of the things we've discussed are having more levels of entry rather than just having people jump right into climate teams where they work with their neighbors in a series of meetings to help each other improve the energy efficiency in their house. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll continue to compete well. There is a $5 million jackpot at the end of this competition, so that's good motivation.
Scott, just what's the timeline on that competition?
It's 2 calendar years, so it'll run through the end. In terms of the data, it'll run this through the end of this calendar year. There will be, I'm not sure whether they do this at the end of this calendar year or at some point in before then. They will narrow the field to some number of finalists, and so there will be a point where we won't know the winner, but we'll know whether we're in the finalists or not. And actually, our because the solar that we're installing with Solar UC is behind the meter, it shows up as as improved performance in the Georgetown University Energy Prize. Because essentially, when billing time comes around, you just have less kilowatts on your bill. So even though they're primarily focused on energy efficiency and solar is about generation, it still improves our performance in the competition. So we're getting prepared to run another rain barrel and compost bin sale. We've got a competitive bid open right now, and it's due in a week or so, and so we'll see what bids we get. In past years, we've got the performance there. Rain barrels sales just keep going. I don't know how many downspouts there are in this region, but there's a lot more apparently. Not sure about compost bins. Apparently, the appetite for those is not quite as strong as rain barrels. So that those sales have continued to taper off. We'll see what happens this next year. In terms of the vendor we've been using, they bring a semi truck full of product down, and so they have room for the compost bins, so it's not too much of a drag to keep offering that, and so we will. Hopefully we'll get competitive bids and we'll like the products that are on offer, and we'll run another sale. The date that we're tentatively looking at is May 14th, so I think that's maybe the second or third Farmers Market Day, Urbana Market at the Square. We're being flexible on the location this year, since the lot where we traditionally have held the sale is now has a forthcoming development. Most likely that development won't be proceeding far enough to affect the sale, but if it does, we've got some backup locations in mind. You may have received a new U-Cycle brochure in your mail today. It's redesigned, more user-friendly, I think. Gets the information across quick, faster, more graphic. And so that's going out to all households, and there seems to be an uptick in the number of U-Cycle cart requests already. So I think direct mail seems to be having a positive impact, and I think we'll consider that in the future in terms of expanding the number of households that are that have a U-Cycle cart. Recently, Best Buy stores in Illinois stopped accepting TVs or computers for recycling. This is all part of the broken electronics recycling law in the state of Illinois. Our recycling coordinator, Courtney Kwong, is on a committee that's working with advocacy groups to improve and fix that law. But what it means is that folks who have electronics that they want to get rid of are going to have a really hard time getting rid of it. We do have some 2 electronics recycling events with the county and with Champaign cooperatively scheduled this year. And so we're going to have that outlet. But unfortunately, there just seems to be still a lot of supply of the expensive to dispose of CRT TVs and monitors. And so those are eating up all the value of the other electronics that show up at these events. And therefore, we're having to pay fees to the recycling vendor to get them to take all electronics that come in, including the CRT TVs. So we're spending, I think it's around $4,000 for Urbana's portion by population for these 2 recycling events, whereas in the past, we've generally not spent any money. The vendor would take all electronics, and they'd spend some money getting rid of things like CRT TVs, and they'd make some money recycling more valuable electronics. And on balance, they were making money, but that's just not the case anymore. So that's something that we're still working on, and hopefully we'll be able to get a law change in the near future.
Talk a little bit more about the CRT and why. They're not recyclable, and so you have to pay to get rid of them, or what's the story there?
I don't know the details, except to say that they have negative value. That is, there's not much to recover. There's not a lot of valuable metals to recover, and there is expense in disposing of what's in there. I don't know the details of why that is. It's just like the comparison of single-use dry cell batteries, like AAA, AA batteries, versus rechargeable batteries. The single-use alkaline batteries, not a lot of value in that can be recovered in repurposing the alkaline. The rechargeable batteries have nickel, cadmium, lithium. These are all things that have enough value that it's worth tearing them apart and separating the materials and reprocessing them into something new. So, our battery recycling, we pay out to recycle the alkaline batteries, and we get paid to recycle a lot of the other batteries. Unfortunately, a lot of people still use a lot of alkaline batteries, and so on balance, we end up paying out because most of the batteries are alkaline, most of the volume. So it's just that kind of situation. At some point, we will have worked out all of the supply of CRT TVs. But, like the rain barrel sales, I don't know when it's going to happen. Our next meeting, next regularly scheduled meeting would be April 5th at 7 p.m. I do want to note that, I got a note here for it. The calendar we had set out for the meetings for the year for SAC included a July 19th meeting, which was the third Tuesday of that month, as I was out of town for the first Tuesdays in July. And when I curated that calendar, that date was open for this room. That is, in fact, BPAC's regularly scheduled time. So we should probably let them continue on their regularly scheduled meeting. We could either change the room, which I haven't had a chance to check, but I'm sure that there's another room here in another building we can use. If we delayed another week, then we'd be going the fourth Tuesday of one month and the first Tuesday of the following month, and that's probably not really worth it. So I'll take your advice. We can schedule to another room, or cancel the meeting altogether, or go 2 meetings 2 weeks in a row.
Thoughts on that? I mean, I'm thinking over the summer. I'm not sure if more people would be out of town for the July meeting or out of town for the August meeting. So I would hate to say, let's just cancel because there'll be people out of town. But
And we don't necessarily have to make a decision
yeah.
tonight. We can wait till June,
Yeah.
and make a decision.
if you could see whether there's another room and then bring that information back,
Yeah.
that'd be
Okay.
great. All right. Are there any other questions or comments for Scott? Okay. We do not have any continuing business in front of us this evening, so we'll move to our new business and the annual report draft. So Scott, if you want to walk us through that.
It's still loading, apparently. Let me close some of these other tabs and see if it pulls up. So this is, I think, there we go. This is a complete document in terms of real data populating all the sections. I'm presenting it to you as a draft tonight. There are a couple of comments that I've gotten internally at Public Works, and I'll mention those as we go through. But this is just a recap. Talked about it before. The effort here is not to provide data on everything that the Environmental Sustainability Division does in a year, because there's only so much that people are willing to read, but instead to provide as clear of a snapshot of the highlights as we can, and to report on the metrics that matter the most within the particular aspects of our division's work. I did have a comment on using acronyms from Public Works. And so the comment was to turn CY into calendar year. It occurs to me that we could just probably get rid of CY and calendar year, and people would probably understand that if you don't say fiscal year, you mean calendar year.
I don't think people will understand that automatically.
Oh, no?
You could say year ending on December 31, 2015, something like that. I know people who would not understand that.
What's that? Bill. There might not be enough room on that particular line for year ending December 31st, 2015.
Well, okay, so if you said, 2015 annual report or whatever
Yeah.
but then in the introduction, say, for the year ending on December 31, 2015.
Sure.
Or maybe it's just like a little subtitle that says, January 1st through December 31st, 2015, like just a small print on the,
Yeah.
smaller print on the cover.
The first page has a brief summary of what our division does, a brief summary of our budget. I had looked at ways to break that budget out into a little bit more detail, but it's kind of all or nothing. But at least this conveys that most of our budget is spent on U-Cycle. We have the calendar year ending progress on our 2 comprehensive plans. And I noticed reviewing or preparing today that I failed to put the pie charts in the staff report as I usually do, but they are the same level of progress on all those categories as the previous month. So the next page is energy and climate. So we have greenhouse gas emissions, savings from municipal electric aggregation, which our division is responsible for. The city facilities greenhouse gas emissions, in the future it's my intention to have a stacked area graph like this one, but we only have one year of inventory, so it's a table this time around. And there's additional information on each page and a featured project when there's a call for either of those. The next page is water. And we have community water consumption, and then per capita. And the per capita is shown, this is another detail I want to fix. There's 3 decimal points here that are all zeros, so there's no point in that. So I need to remove that from the chart. The per capita is shown in 2 ways. One is residential consumption per capita, so just what's used in residential addresses, meters, divided by population, and then total water consumption for the residential, commercial, industrial water consumption divided by population. Also, in the past, I had rendered this community water chart exactly as the data is reported to me from Illinois American Water Company, and they report a category separate from industrial and commercial called public sector, which is interesting, but it's a different category than we use in the energy and climate page. We don't have a public sector energy, and so I wanted those to be more parallel and roll that into commercial. Also, there's an asterisk on calendar year 2013 there, which I have explanation here. That data is estimated in 2013. Illinois American Water, when data was requested in early 2014, Illinois American did not provide 2013 data, and in fact they had a computer system upgrade, and so they switched to a new computer system. And when I made our recent inquiries for data from all the folks that we get data from, they were only able to provide half of that calendar year, 2013. So I've just estimated it so that the curve is more or less accurate. But it appears that we're not going to get that actual data. And then I have city facilities water consumption. Buildings win this year. We've had huge conservation in the irrigation water consumption for city facilities. Buildings continued to decline in water use. Irrigation went up. In talking to the Arbor Division, they were able, we looked at the data by building, they were able to identify some buildings where they had leaks and failures in the irrigation system that weren't immediately recognized, and so that seems to be where that increase comes from. I don't think in calendar year 2015 they added any new irrigation systems to any new landscapes, so I think it's all leakage. So it's something we're going to work to get a hold on next year. Next page, waste and recycling. We have the city as a whole, and so this is data from the Landscape Recycling Center, all of our licensed garbage haulers, and as well as the U-Cycle. And I've got some particular details over here. Our total waste diversion in 2015 was 37%. Also got just the U-Cycle snapshot, so you can see the trend there between multifamily and curbside. And then our battery recycling, slowly going up. The next page is nuisance abatement. Our division oversees nuisance abatement rules in the city, so things like excessive weedy growth on properties, tall grass, vegetation that encourages vermin, as well as waste disposal, refuse, producible wastes. So we have rules like every city does in terms of having garbage picked up at least every week and that sort of thing. And so we have a staff person that does those types of inspections, takes those complaint calls. And so this is tracking those. And the first chart is by type. So you can see that most of our nuisance complaints are vegetation. The next chart is by resolution. And so city abated versus owner abated. The font looks a little messed up there. I'll have to check that. That chart shows how that particular complaint was reconciled. So if we get a complaint and we put a door tag on the house to have the situation resolved by the property owner, and they resolve it within the time period allotted, that's owner abated, and that's what we want. If the owner does not abate the nuisance, the city has to employ a contractor who's on call on a term contract to abate the nuisance, which might mean mowing the lawn. It might mean picking up garbage from the curb of the house. This is all outside of the house code enforcement. So if it's inside the house, that doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. That would be more of a building code issue. It is very expensive for us to maintain an on-call contractor on a term contract. And so it's, and of course we have to pass those costs through to the property owner as part of a fine procedure. And it's very expensive if the city has to abate that. So we try to, we work to do whatever it takes to get a hold of the property owner and compel them to abate the nuisance themselves. So that's what that chart represents. I don't have any more to say about that. And also under our division is the Adopter BANA program, which is kind of like Adopt a Highway. We've only been collecting precise data on the volunteer hours for 2 calendar years, so it's not a chart that tells you a lot, but it'll tell us more as we have more years of data. So that is a program whereby...
Can you tell us about volunteer projects
Mhm.
that you've done in
Sure.
years?
So Adopter BANA is a program whereby the city facilitates community groups who want to do community cleanups. A lot of it is roadside or empty lots, and they adopt a roadside, so to speak. And the request for them to adopt is that they commit to doing 2 cleanups per year. The city provides safety equipment, gloves, vests, garbage pickers, garbage bags, and we also provide collection of the garbage bags at the end of the community group's event. And so we have a number of those community groups around town. Some years they drop off, some years we get new ones. And so we've started to track the volunteer hours that they provide. So we ask them how many people are there going to be, give them the appropriate equipment, ask them how many hours they're going to spend on it, and that's what we record.
You know, one thing I was just thinking about is, we have the new boneyard improvement, and so I go out and enjoy that a lot with my family, and we don't go out there intending to pick up trash, and it's just a low spot, trash will just blow in and settle there just because of gravity, and so we find ourselves picking up trash just because it's there, and anyways, I was thinking about that.
Did your family want to adopt the Boneyard Creek?
Boy, after walking away, I thought, man, it'd be cool to have a group that would just get together every once in a while and pick up the junk that just kind of falls in here.
Yeah, that's a obviously that's a new location that's open to the public, and certainly one we want to keep clean. I know we have some landscaping contracts. I don't know to what degree those include garbage collection.
And our landscaping employees in the arbor division, I know that is also included in their weekly duties, but this time of year is different because the seasonal employees aren't around and they're also dealing with snow issues. So I see it being picked up more in better weather and in the summer.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say it as a complaint. It's just an observation that the wind blows, and so it carries stuff in, and also the water flows through it, and so just all kinds of stuff conveys there and settles in there. And anyway.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful development. So if you're going to pick up garbage somewhere, that's a nice spot to do it. So that's a really good idea. I think we should spend a little communications time, recruiting a community group to.
Well, I'd work with you on it.
Take it over. Great. Yeah. What I can do is get you our PDF and/or print of our Adopter BANA brochure. And then the final page here is awards and grants, EPA WasteWise Award, U.S. Conference of Mayors, Green Office Challenge, Grow Solar grants, and the APA Award. I'd like to take comments on, the big picture stuff like what's in here and what's not, graphic design, and then spend a moment digging into the greenhouse gas inventory chart specifically. But first, any more big picture report type comments. Looks great. Okay. Let me zoom into our greenhouse gas chart here for a minute. So this chart is in fact not an export from our greenhouse gas modeling tool, ClearPath. They don't present the data in a stacked area graph like I like. They have some bar graphs instead. So I've taken the data and I've tried to copy the colors they use for the categories to maintain consistency in the event that I do show their exports at another time. The water and wastewater is a dark orange, solid waste a light orange. I have arranged them from largest proportion on the bottom to smallest proportion on the top, and that should be true of all the stacked area graphs. That's a style that I'm going to work to continue. The water and wastewater section does not really show because it's that small of a proportion. The Global Protocol for Greenhouse Gas Accounting, the document that describes how municipalities all over the world should account for their greenhouse gases, specifically asks for a water and wastewater category. What they want in that water and wastewater category is, of course, gas and electric consumption. In the for wastewater, they also want additional greenhouse gases like methane that escapes. So, methane that's combusted on site, methane that's combusted for energy recovery, methane that's combusted for flaring, other process-related, wastewater treatment process-related emissions. Because we have a separate district for wastewater and because we have a private company for water, in our chart, it does not include gas and electric consumption for those two sectors or categories. It only includes the process emissions, so combustion of methane and other process emissions for wastewater. And it just turns out to, in the grand scheme of our inventory, it doesn't account for a lot. The gas and electric.
Where do they end up? Do they end up in industrial or in commercial?
I don't know, because what I get
Somewhere.
from Ameren, private utility company, is the totals. So I get, here's all of the commercial accounts consumption for gas and electric totaled for the year. Presumably, if there's a standalone office for the water company, that probably ends up being categorized by Ameren as commercial. However, their water treatment plant probably gets categorized as industrial.
Okay.
Those things also change from time to time as Ameren finds that in fact one thing should have been categorized as another. So I don't know, but I'm guessing there's a split. But next thing I was going to say was that in fact their consumption is in one or the other of those categories, their gas and electric consumption.
Okay.
So it is
Scott, would we pick up some portion of the pumping stations that lift our water out of the aquifer are not in the city of Urbana, but some share of the water use is in Urbana. Do we claim the proportion of energy? No. So
No.
it's based on facilities and city limits. It's not a life cycle on those resources.
So we could do that. The idea with the greenhouse gas modeling tool is, it's supposed to simplify everything. Like all you have to do is get, the raw data, key it in, hit save. In fact, it's not quite that simple. There is still a lot of outside of the tool calculations that have to happen. And so we do that. And part of my discussion here was that, when we created a new inventory in 2013, I mentioned that we're using a new tool. We have a brand new comprehensive year-by-year data set from Ameren going back from 2007 through 2013. And so I redid the 2007 inventory that had been done years ago. And it was more or less the same, but the numbers were different. And what I've learned this year is that an inventory is never done. every other year, I'm probably going to have to redo all of the inventories that came before. Not 100% from scratch, but for instance, when we did the 2013 inventory, the EPA document that describes the grid intensity, how much carbon emissions come from our grid, a kilowatt in our grid, was, I can't remember the exact year, 2011 was the most recent publication. So in 2013, I used the 2011 numbers and then made up some of the difference in the intervening years that those numbers weren't representing with the renewable portfolio standards impact within those years. Well, now there's a 2012 representation of our carbon intensity of the grid. So now I've gone back and applied the 2012 carbon intensity of the grid to our 2013 inventory, and then just did 1 year of the renewable portfolio standard. And so this is going to go on forever because, not all data is available in the time frame that we're going to do our inventory. So that's unfortunate, but that's just kind of, we could just memorialize, an inventory in time and lose some small amount of precision, I suppose. But in doing the inventory in 2015 and finding that, the calculations behind the tool, the underlying calculations were different. And so even just hitting recalculate for previous inventories changed those data numbers. But then also, it's called eGrid, which is the EPA's publication of the grid intensity. That was new. The way that the Regional Planning Commission was able to report to us transportation data was different than before. The ways that transportation data was inputted into the tool was different than before. And so there was all these things that were different, and I felt compelled to go back to the previous two inventories and reset them. Because, of course, the idea is not to have the exact precise number. We're never going to have that. There's models upon models upon models in here. But to at least have a pretty good representation of the trend, which direction we're going. So that's all been done, and that's all represented in this chart. I'm very pleased to report, and you can kind of see it in the chart, but I can give you the actual number. Actually, it's in the additional information. From 2013 to 2015, we had a 5% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. That's really on track for our 2020 goal. We're getting about 14% reduction from our baseline from the purchase of renewable energy credits. We've got another 3 years of that, presuming that carries through forever and ever. We're on track now. Whether we'll continue that 2.5 a year, it's hard to say. But I was buoyed by the results. So that's what I wanted to share with you on.
We got to figure out the next big strategies.
Yeah.
All the other bars are pretty much same thickness all the way through. That looks like that's the only thing that I can see where there's big changes. Other than on the commercial, it looks like there's an increase from 2007.
Yeah, there was. I think it went well. I think all. So we may want to have another meeting where I bring this data and slice it up a bunch of different ways so we can look at it. And Todd, I can get you raw data because I know that you're have proficiency at slicing up data in different ways. I think most sectors, I think all sectors from 2013 to 2015 declined except industrial. You can see that increased. And
that was one of those weird meter things, though, wasn't it?
that was water. Well, no, maybe you're right. I think that was. I do remember seeing a chart where industrial and commercial kind of flipped. Was that energy or was that water?
That was energy.
Was it? Okay.
Where there was some weird number of industrial accounts, and then the next year there was many more or many less. I forget what it was.
Well, if you look, the industrial increased in all the years of our inventory. So,
have-
you know, the economic development director might be pleased. You know, that's probably a good sign in some respects.
I'm sorry. I noticed that there was a member of the public who would like to share a comment if nobody objects to.
I just had a quick question because you said that you guys saw a 5% decrease in GHGs, right? And then you also said that a majority of that was probably because of your investment in the solar energy project, right?
I
Is that
would.
what you said? That's what maybe I misconstrued that. Sorry. Could you clarify?
Well, our solar projects are just being, you know, installed this calendar year.
Oh, okay.
So they wouldn't be reflected in the 2015 inventory.
Okay.
Even still, while that contributes, that would only be one of many factors. And it'd be hard to characterize proportionally what was most impactful.
Okay. Could you just list out a couple other things that were impactful?
Well, it's not clear. I mean, the data isn't explicit about you know what elements cause that 2.5% a year. I'd like to take credit for all of it. You know, we had a.
What about the renewable energy credits in the residential? I mean, that was the big one, right, on the residential side.
Yeah, that doesn't account for all of it.
Okay.
There was additional energy savings aside from that. So what I had done, again, calculations outside of ClearPath was I took our greenhouse gas inventory numbers with and without the renewable energy credits. And the renewable energy credits are basically, from 2013 to 2015, are more or less static because we're buying essentially the same amount of renewable energy credits. And so most of that additional reduction from 2013 to 2015 is not renewable energy credits, something else. So, you know, we ran a commercial building challenge, the Energy Star Challenge, for 2 years. You know, if I were to compare the data that I got reported there to this volume of greenhouse gases, it probably wouldn't equate. Okay. There are other things going on. There's a baseline. There's some baseline of energy efficiency that's going to happen, you know, if we do nothing. So it's hard to distinguish the baseline that's happening versus what we're stimulating.
This is not normalized for heating degree days, cooling degree
No.
days? So it could be weather?
Could be weather.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nevertheless, good direction.
Is the carbon, so you were talking about the carbon intensity attributed to, I think with electricity is where it changes over time. Do you see it decreasing over time?
Yeah, well, you know, one example is the renewable portfolio standard.
Sure.
As the renewable portfolio standard goes up, carbon intensity goes down. I suppose there is more electricity generated with natural gas today than there was in previous years. So that's going to, you know, insofar as that's replacing coal,
Right.
that's going to reduce the carbon intensity.
So if we're, I mean, we could reasonably expect that we're seeing some less carbon intensity year by year with some variation. So that might be a piece of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The renewable portfolio standard, depending on the year, is 1.5%, or 2% step down or step up in terms of the renewables that have to be on the grid. So that's certainly happening. I think the 5%. I think the 5% is additional to the renewable portfolio standard. I'll have to look at the model again. Oh no, our projections. That's probably not true, because these are real data, not projections, where we input the renewable portfolio standard year by year. So yeah, some of that may be reflected in the renewable portfolio standard.
Okay.
Are there other comments or questions?
Oh, just one real small thing. I because of the color of solid waste in water and wastewater, I can't distinguish the two of those. They're right next to each other, and their colors are almost the same. So, anyway.
Yeah, I can double check, the colors that they use in the tool, but in fact, you can't see water and wastewater. It's that small.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm zooming in and I'm still not seeing, even a border line.
Oh,
But it is technically there.
okay.
But I may be able to move those two colors apart a little bit. That might create a little more clarity.
I have a real small clarification on the waste side of this. So there's a chart that shows total waste diversion, so landfilled, recycled, and composted, and then there's a breakout of U-cycle programs. And just to my eye, it looks like U-cycle, multifamily, and curbside is about a third of the green bar recycled in the chart above it. So that looks like it's about 10,000 tons, and the U-cycle program in 2015 looks like it's maybe a little less than a third of that. So the other recycled, the balance, is that like construction waste recycled, or just non-U-cycle recycling? Can you characterize that?
So there's two sources of our recycling data. Well, there's several sources. One source is U-cycle reports that we get from our vendors because we control that program. Another source is commercial recycling that is reported to us by ordinance annually from all of our licensed haulers.
Okay.
We also, I believe that we also have our city facilities recycling reported in there. And I think that probably includes city facilities, construction, demolition, because we control those projects, we can account for that. In future reporting requests from our licensed haulers, we're going to start asking them to report construction and demolition, waste recycling, because we're going to have a C&D recycling facility in town. In the past, I think we've just been requesting and reporting, commodities recycling, paper and plastic, and so forth. And so we're going to get, I think, more of that reported, and probably more of it recycled, as I presume that it's going to be more economical.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Any additional questions or comments? All right. Thank you much. It's really, I really like seeing all these different dimensions of sustainability in one snapshot. I really like the fact that this is being instituted. So.
Yeah, aside from a couple of edits, my intention is to send this to council for their information.
Great. All right, let's move to announcements. And Andrew, did you want to talk a little bit about the conference coming up?
Yes, it's on March 10th and 11th, and it's a conference on climate change and impacts. It's at the iHotel, and you can go online and check the agenda for the different speakers that are going to be there. So I think it depends on if you're U of I affiliated or outside. I don't remember the cost.
I think it was $75 if you're not, and it's
Yeah,
free if you are.
for U of I staff, students.
Are there any other announcements this evening?
I don't know the date, but isn't Boneyard Creek Community Day coming up? Or is anyone here more informed about that?
Not I.
I guess it's probably in April, isn't it? Okay. I was because when Todd was talking about the Boneyard, like there's that creek day.
All right, any other announcements?
The Boneyard Creek cleanup isn't until April 23rd.
We have plenty of time to plan ahead. All right. Seeing no other business before us, is there a motion to adjourn?
Send the motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.